Hi everyone, and welcome to the first week council of and the first council of Michaelmas and the first council of the year. I'm Anisha Fruit, Queen's College. I use she/her pronouns, and I'm chair of council this term. I just want to ask, before you begin speaking, would everyone be able to say their name, college, and preferred pronouns? Make sure you can speak clearly so that the audio picks up your voice, and just to let you know that this meeting is being recorded for greater transparency and will be uploaded to YouTube later on. Since this is the first student council meeting of the year, I just thought I'd take a second to talk you guys through what exactly student council is. So student council is meant to represent the voice of the students and acts as a representative to channel student opinions. It's responsible for SU policy and it scrutinises the executive, which is made up of the staff officers who are sat at the front. So first thing on the agenda, are there any issues with the minutes of the previous meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on. Any matters arising from the previous meeting? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so now elections in council. We have two elections that we're running today. So first one is so first we're going to be running the election for returning officer, and then we'll be running the election for rules committee.
Hi everyone, so my name is Josh O'Connor. I use he, him pronouns. I'm acting as returning officer as we don't currently have a returning officer, hence the election, and none of the sabbatical officers want to do it for the first one, so they've asked me to do it. So yeah, we have one candidate for returning officer to begin with. His name is Alex Kumar. Would anyone like to see a hust? Okay, yep, so if Alex, you'd like to come up. You just want to give a quick introductory speech.
Hi, Alex Kumar, he, him, Teddy Hool. So I think a lot of you know me because for the past year I've been chair of On Your Doorstep, CSU homelessness campaign. Or is it? Because technically it's not been a campaign for the past year, even though it has been a campaign, but we're resolving that tonight with a motion for me and Rosanna, our Charities and Communities SAB. But so I've been chair of On Your Doorstep homelessness campaign last year. I've also been generally involved with things in the SU and student council. So section 7.1 of the Oxford Student Union bylaws sets out responsibilities of the returning officer. For this term, because the position's only for one term as opposed to a year, essentially returning officer is responsible for elections in council, such as, but not including my election, by-elections, for instance, if I were to be impeached after being elected, or if you were impeached, or if Anisha were impeached. Referenda, should we have any of those, and any other elections that council decides to hold. Returning officer also sits on a few SU committees, steering committee and the elections committee. Section 7.6 of the bylaws requires the returning officer act with impartiality when carrying out the job of returning officer and ensure elections are fairly and properly conducted. If elected, I will do these things. Any questions?
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone have any questions for Alex? Seeing none, we will. Oh, we have one there.
Dean Rogers, Merton College. Is this on? Okay, that's good. How would you respond if candidates were to break the rules and group into slates, which is, I think, a rule change that was introduced last year?
Are there any other questions for Alex? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. just to describe how voting works, you should all have a voting pad. The next slides will be where you will vote. It will be 1 to vote for Alex Kumar. It will be 2 to vote for Ron, which stands for reopen nominations, and 0 will be to abstain. So voting is now open. And voting is now closed. So Alex Kumar is elected. That did not work. Let me just 2 seconds. Okay, sorry guys. I think there was an error there. If everyone can cast their votes again now. So your voting pad should display the number that you're clicking. If it doesn't, it has a wheel, then we have an issue. I don't know why it's not working. Shall we do these online? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Since the electronic voter pads don't seem to be working properly, we're going to be doing this vote online after the council meeting is finished, and an email will be sent to everyone eligible to vote, and they'll be able to vote online instead. But we'll do HUSs now for the second positions up for election, which are for Rules Committee. So if we could have Eric and Alex, if you're hosting.
First of all, does anybody wish to see a HUST? Yep, one scene. So, Eric, if you'd like to go first, there should be a mic on the floor for you.
Oh, yeah, so I'm running for Rules Committee, which is responsible for making rules about student clubs and societies mainly, also rowing on the river, a couple of other things. I'd like in particular to make a small practical change to the rules. So those 4 regulations I've put there, basically, they make it so that all student societies have to have a single president, and if a society, say, wants to have co-chairs, they have to apply for dispensation, which can take quite a long time from the process. So I'd just like to make it easier by allowing for co-chairs in the standard constitution in the first place. Oh, by the way, I'm Eric, Univ, he, him.
Thank you. And Alex?
So are the HUSs going to be available online or? Okay.
Yes, the videos will be put on.
So Alex, he, him, Teddy Hool. So I agree with my fellow nominee about amending regulations 1.11.1d, 1.11.3, and 1.12, 1c and 1.12.6, because having been co-chair of a society myself, it was awkward applying for dispensation, and there's no need for that, it's antiquated. But I don't have any specific platform or agenda for this. I'll attend the meeting in Hillary and put voice to whatever concerns people wish to relay. about rules and regulations and make sure nothing should happen in that annual meeting to erode the rights of students. It would be nice if more people ran. I don't know if people can nominate from the floor, but there are, even with the two of us, there are still going to be a number of vacant spaces left for students. The Rules Committee only meets annually. So there's one meeting you have to go to. And just with the two of us elected, there's still spaces left over. So if nominations can come from the floor, I encourage anyone to nominate. There's only one meeting you have to do.
Unfortunately, nominations can't come from the floor. However, we'll be rerunning this election because of the vacant spaces in third week council until the spaces are filled. Does anyone have any questions for the candidates? Please keep your questions answerable by both candidates. I see one there.
Dane Rogers, Merton College, he, him. I'm assuming one of the things that's covered by the Rules Committee is trashing, which, to those who don't know, is a tradition where you get covered in shaving foam, silly string, and the like, which the university rules officially ban but don't ban in practice. Would you be in favour of some sort of rules change, at least for the not so extreme forms of trashing outside of the exam hall?
Alex, would you like to answer first?
Trashing. So as you said, there currently are rules against trashing, but it still happens, and I don't know, a lot of people in this room, myself included, have trashed others or been trashed themselves. Last term, I ended up quoted in several of the national papers about trashing because one of the proctors sent around an email on the subject of trashing, but sort of oddly making it about homelessness and using that email to blame homelessness in Oxford on students, which was very weird. So I think the university management's position on trashing is sort of very unclear and convoluted. At the same time, it's banned but unenforced. It's also something they cynically weaponize to attack the social consciousnesses of students and to dodge responsibility themselves for the universities implicated in homelessness when university and colleges take actions against homeless people, evicting rough sleepers or erecting fences to stop people sleeping. So I would look for I'd push for clarification on trashing from the university and consult with students to see, whether people want the university's approach changed.
Thank you, Alex. Eric?
Yes, I agree basically with that. The specific rule that the Rules Committee is responsible for making regarding trashing doesn't name trashing. It's an anti-littering and property damage rule. So I don't think we could reasonably say we should get rid of that. I think it's not really what's been done wrong about trashing hasn't really been done wrong from the Rules Committee's regulations. It's the university's approach.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the candidates? I see one there.
I do apologize. Yuri Alexeyev, Christchurch, he, him. Taking a hypothetical example of a student club descending into malicious, seditious, or hate speech activities, what would be the best course of action in such a case?
Eric, if you'd like to answer first.
Well, again, the Rules Committee is mostly responsible for regulating the constitution of society, so it has very limited powers. It's not responsible for monitoring the actual work of the proctors or what the societies do. That's for the proctors.
Alex?
I think we should have zero tolerance for hate speech, sedition. I don't know, but is that?
Any other questions? Alex, would you like to define your word?
I think sedition. That's the thing. I don't really want to respond to sedition because sedition can include lots of things that, come well within the boundaries of free speech, and I think university students, should be able to, criticize their governments or their country, or talk about politics. We've gone from the early 19th century when students here weren't allowed to talk about those things. Hate speech is a different matter. I'm against conflating sedition and hate speech.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the candidates? I see one in the front.
Sorry. Shreyas Ganesh, Exeter, he, him. So what would your definition of hate speech be in any rules that you would make?
Alex, if you'd like to answer first.
So I'm not sure we're allowed to. I don't think the Rules Committee has any remit to generate laws about hate speech, because I think a lot of that does come from central government or from.
Yeah, can you get the microphone to the point of information?
Kat Walton, she, her, issue. Just point of information that the university does have a harassment policy which includes its stance on hate speech, and it falls under whether or not speech would violate the dignity, create a hostile environment, and something else that I can't recall from memory, but it is specifically noted in the harassment policy that is also is hopefully in every single college as well, but it's definitely university-wide.
I don't think we would have any ability to do anything about that, or to get rid of that, or to change it, or extend it.
Eric?
Yes, basically, I agree with that. The Rules Committee is just responsible for the formal constitution of clubs.
Are there any other questions for the candidates? Seeing none. Okay, thank you both. As you previously said, we won't be doing a vote now because the voting pads are not working, unfortunately. There will be, if you've signed in as a voting member, we will send out an email with an election that you can vote online shortly after this meeting, so the votes can be cast, and then they will be announced as soon as that closes. We will also, throughout the rest of this council, be using your voter pads as just a voting card, so if you can hold those up. Some of you may be aware that we would normally send out with the minutes a breakdown of how everyone has voted. However, this is nice. It is not actually required with the rules. So we will not obviously be able to do that with the voting pads not currently working, but everything else should be fine. I'll hand over to Anisha.
And just to let you guys know that we will be running obviously the remaining positions on the Rules Committee next week. So there are 3 other positions. Elections for Scrutiny Committee, Steering Committee, Elections Committee, and the Joint Subcommittee of Education Committee with student members. And obviously, if you guys do choose to reopen nominations for the elections that we just had, then we'll run those again too. Yeah, so moving on. Reports to council now, if the sabbatical officers could get up. And please stick to 30 seconds for your reports. Guys, get up.
Hi Council, I'll keep this really short. First of all, I'm really sorry that it's taken us till 6 p.m. to get to this stage. Hopefully we'll try and pick up the pace from now on. And my name's Joe Inwood, I'm president this year, I use he, him pronouns. Up until now, I've been basically laying the groundwork for my campaigns for the year. So I've been working with Ellie on a mental health campaign, which will involve raising awareness and a kind of anti-stigma element in Hillary. But right now is mainly lobbying the university. So we're in sort of constant conversations with the university on trying to improve provision and make a kind of more holistic institution-wide approach to dealing with mental ill health in Oxford. I've also been working with Lucas on access priorities, which is a team priority for us this year. And yeah, that's the kind of thing I've been up to.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucas, he, him. I'm your Vice President for Access and Academic Affairs. In line with the apology for the lateness, also apology for the room and it not being particularly accessible. It was listed as an accessible room. I've listed out my priorities for the year on my student report, but I'll just read them out very quickly. They are setting up forums on access and academic affairs, holding an event with the university to discuss its social role, signing the university up to more ambitious access and attainment gap targets, consulting students, that's you guys, on reading weeks, and reviewing suspension, recommended patterns of teaching, lecture capture guidelines, and renewing and redrafting the access and education visions.
Hello everyone. Oh, you did my face. Sorry. I'm Rosanna. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm sorry, I've got the giggles now. And I'm vice president of Charities and Communities. I've basically been working on volunteering. So I've done a review on our community warden scheme, so that can kind of be readapted to encourage a more holistic approach, basically, to student life, especially when it comes to volunteering. I've also planned Veggie Pledge, and what else have I been doing? You can pop into the SU, and it's a refill station, and you can fill up your water bottle. So wholesome.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm not as wholesome as Rosanna. Oh, kind of. I ran a student and parents Pride Against Students. I'm sorry. I'm Allison D'Ambrosia. I'm graduates. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you. Sorry. So we ran a student parents pregnant student carers event with some of our lovely staff members that was really well received, and lots of little kids running around. It was really cute. And we're going to put some motions into place on how to make the university more accessible for student parents and get some support and provisions for them. With the MCR presidents to discuss how the SU can support you. I'm going to continue doing that as well.
Hello, my name's Ellie. I'm the VP for Welfare and Equal Ops. I use she, they pronouns. So worked on 2 reports over the summer, Trans Report 2018 and Estranged Students, which I've submitted to the PVC for Education and Domestic Versus Committee. Working with Joe on mental health, lobbying the university. Working with SUSCAM and piloting some suspension training and things this term. And organised World Mental Health Day. Happy World Mental Health Day, everybody. And develop welfare training for welfare reps. Thank you.
Hi, Kat, she, they, VP of Women. So I've been working in collaboration with the university on the new Sexual Violence Support Service. I've written a sex worker survey that's going to be going through some ethics approval soon. Updated all the training material for bystander intervention and consent. I then also ran 19 consent workshop training sessions and 8 bystander intervention training sessions, and all the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, which is great. I've been working with OSARC as well on the new services ISFA, which is an independent sexual violence advocate. I'm starting working on the Freer Period project. Been working on welfare training with Ellie, and yeah, you read the rest online.
Any questions to the sabbatical officers? Yep.
Hey, Simon, he, him, Hartford College, but also kind of here through On Your Doorstep. I just wanted to bring to your attention that recently has emerged that there's a group of about 60 women housed by a social housing charity in North Oxford who are going to be evicted over the winter. And so my question to you would be, what are the measures that you could take as SABs, as representatives of the student union, to, promote a responsible solution in the situation where a pretty significant amount of women is, facing eviction in pretty harsh conditions?
Okay, so this is an interesting question because some of the committees I sit on deal with kind of buildings around Oxford. I think one of the things that we can kind of provide is obviously advice on housing, especially to students. So Alison and I have been working together, especially on housing, especially when it comes to graduate housing. But I think basically ensuring that we have a means for them to contact us, even if it means going there. And we could go with members of On Your Doorstep, just as a really simple answer.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, this is the first. It's not students, is it? No.
No, it's not students.
No. Yeah.
No, it's not. No, it's not students. So
Yeah, drop us an email and we will follow up, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Okay, great. That's good.
Any more questions? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Thanks very much.
Okay, now we'll be moving on to motions. I just want to draw your attention to some of the motions later on in the agenda that are below the line, which means if nobody brings up any opposition to them, then they'll just pass automatically because we've deemed them to be quite uncontroversial. So the proposer of the first motion, winding up the environment, community, and global justice campaign. If you could just give a 3-minute speech proposal. Or however long.
Yeah, it kind of basically speaks for itself. At the minute, the kind of structure is a bit bizarre in that there's super campaigns that don't exist. They're kind of just metaphorical campaigns, and basically we're going through kind of word on this is we're doing a campaign review at the minute, which is super exciting, and it's basically there to make it easier for students to get involved with the student union. And I'm not going to want to answer too many questions on that this week because we're bringing it to third week council as a discussion point. But basically this is the first kind of step in order for us to discuss how we can help students get involved. So basically we're just wrapping up these committees. All the ones that are underneath them will still exist. In fact, they're becoming official campaigns. It's all very confusing. Josh knows more about it than I do because it's all in the governance, but that's basically it. Yeah, it's not very interesting.
Do we have any questions for the proposer? Is this a short factual question?
Hello, you are Alexei Christchurch, he, him. Presumably environment campaign has been replaced with something. What?
So it's not that they're being... for example, climate justice campaign currently sits underneath environment super campaign. But super campaign doesn't exist. So there's campaigns underneath them that do exist. They're not disappearing. It's basically just the name of these super campaigns. It's very confusing, and that's why we're basically wrapping it up. But yes, it doesn't mean that suddenly there's going to be nothing devoted to environment lobbying. Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Sorry, that was very
boring. So the next motion is the SU Access Vision. If Lucas could.
Hello everyone, hi, I'm Lucas, he, him. I'm your Vice President for Access and Academic Affairs. Some of you might have come to the event we held yesterday, the SU talking about access, which you'd already seen. The Access Vision is the same one. Basically, they have these Access Visions, it was last passed 3 years ago, so it's up for expiry this year. They're quite long and convoluted, and they don't really say what we want them to say at the moment. Things have moved on, we're going to be renewing them properly and consulting you guys very broadly on them. But at the same time, it's good to have a steer from council right at the beginning of the year because this is going to be an interesting and pivotal year in access, in particular with the signing of a new access and participation plan by the university, which will set its targets on widening participation and student attainment gaps for the next 3 to 5 years. And that's happening this year, so it'd be good to have a steer from Student Council on what we want to do. And I have drafted up this interim SU Access Vision to guide our policy over the year, and it reads, access and widening participation is a key priority for the SU. We'll support student efforts on outreach. We'll push the university to support outreach work and to reform its admission system so that Oxford becomes a representative national university. We hold diversity to be a form of excellence in itself. Yeah, that's about it.
Any short factual questions for the proposer? Yep.
Gwynfor Morgan, ex-college, he, him pronouns. So essentially, why do we need to get rid of the whole 5-page document? I've had a look at it, and a lot of it still seems to be fairly relevant. It seems quite strange to get rid of, so essentially going from a 5-page, very detailed document to less than 500.
Sorry, this is not a short factual question. If we could have any amendments coming later, please. Yeah, any short factual questions? Seeing none. So now items for debate. If Lucas could address that.
Yeah, no, I think there are two reasons why we might want to take a separate look at it. The first is that as we develop and consult policy over the year, there are decisions that we might want to make, and we wouldn't necessarily want to be bound by the Access Vision as we discover what people's opinions are. In the old Access Vision, there is a discussion, there's a point saying something along the lines of, we'll keep looking at foundation years and see what people think about them. Well, foundation years are here now, and they've been here for a couple of years, and we should really have an opinion on them, I think. And once we have one, I don't think we should necessarily wait to pass another vision at the end of the year, especially when this access participation plan and the university's approach to access will be changing during the year. It'll be too late to change it by the end of the year. I also think, if I'm honest, the current document is a bit of a clunky mix of vision and specific policy proposals. I think a lot of those policy proposals will take forwards over the year as separate specific policies to go in the policy book, but it's a bit odd to have them built into what should be, I think, our guiding principle and how we approach the issue on a strategic level. When we look at what the current Access Vision says in terms of the principle element of it, I think it is a little bit, it doesn't quite reflect what we as the student union necessarily think is important, in that it places a tremendous emphasis on selection by academic excellence. And I think that academic excellence is very, very important. I mean, we are an academically excellent university and we want to maintain that. But it doesn't talk about diversity as a good in and of itself, really. And I think we also think that diversity is good in and of itself. And this briefer vision seeks to capture both of those priorities.
Okay. Any other items for debate? Seeing none. Any opposition to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
So the third motion that we'll be discussing is the motion on the European Union. So if the proposer of the motion could come up and do a 3-minute speech, please.
Hi, I'm Dominic Brind, Magdalen College, he, him. So yeah, I brought this motion because I think that the SDU should back a people's vote on the final Brexit deal. I think this is incredibly important for the SDU, and I think it is absolutely the core of what the SDU should be fighting for. I think the first reason why is because of the students at this university, almost 2/3 of undergraduate students were too young to have a say in 2016 in the first referendum because they were under 18. That includes me, that includes Libby, who's seconding this motion. And I think there are currently 1.7 million people like us nationwide. There will be over 2 million by the time we actually leave the European Union. And I think it would be an attack on democratic process if that group of people have to live with Brexit for an incredibly long time, will be denied a say on this thing that's so important for their future. So given these people this is a huge number of SU members, I think the SU should be fighting for them to have a say on the most important democratic issue facing this country. Secondly, I say that there's an enormous threat from the damaging Tory Brexit that could be faced by the university. I think the university is very clear in its warnings about the loss of EU funding from the Horizon 2020 programme, and I think that has a real danger both to postgraduate students undertaking research and also to undergraduate students who benefit from being at a world-leading institution. I think it's also potentially really bad for EU students who faced uncertainty about their status at this university. I think that a Brexit along the lines that the government are currently proposing would massively impact the ability of EU students in the future to come and study here. And I think that the SU should be fighting to keep the university as open and global and vibrant and diverse place as possible by having as many EU students here as possible. I think also that the fact that we would lose access to the Erasmus Plus scheme under the government's current Brexit proposals would be a very bad thing for students as well. So I think all of these things are incredibly important to student members, both in terms of worsening their experience at university, worsening the experience of future students to come to university. and because SU members will be denied a vote on this incredibly important issue, and that's why I think the SU should support people's vote.
Thank you. I'd just like to bring it to the attention of Student Council believes number 9. The second sentence in that should be believes 10. That's just a small mistake. On the FC's part. So, if are there any short factual questions for the proposer? Yep.
So what this motion would commit the SU to supporting would be a people's vote on the final Brexit deal with an option to remain in the European Union. So that does leave the precise wording of the question open, as the National People's Vote campaign does.
Any other short factual questions? Seeing none. Any item for debate? Seeing none. Any opposition to the motion? Would you be able to speak in opposition then?
Okay. So it's Matthew Judson, Lady Margaret Hall, he, him. Yeah, so we held a consultation poll of our members, and a number of members of Lady Margaret Hall told us that they didn't feel it is the place of the student union to be taking an overtly political stance. They said that the student union should exist to improve the lives of students as students, and this taking a stance on this issue isn't doing that in a direct enough way. Therefore, they asked us to vote against the motion. So, on the basis of that poll, we will be casting a vote against the motion. So, do you have any response to that question? Is that?
Yeah. So no, I absolutely accept that some people might see this as an overly political motion. I would say two things in response. Firstly, I think that the SU absolutely is and should be a political institution. I think national political issues massively affect the lives of students, and for all of the reasons I stated above, I think that Brexit could be incredibly damaging to the university and to students. Also, if you look through the policy book of the student union, there are a huge number of other policies that could be impacted by Brexit. For example, air pollution. The EU enforces guidelines on air pollution and makes legal mechanisms easier to do so. The student union has a lot of stuff in the NHS. The NHS currently has the highest number of staff vacancies in its history because it's hard to recruit nurses and doctors. The NHS is potentially having to look at stockpiling medicines because of the government's process. There's stuff about, for example, stuff about gender equality could be made much harder by Brexit. The Equality and Human Rights Commission has said that there are potential threats to it. The EU does a huge amount of funding towards ending the gender pay gap, for example. So I think across a wide range of areas of SU policy, this could be incredibly badly. And finally, we'll just say, just for the avoidance of doubt, the results in that poll were 75 in the consultation of LMH students that didn't quite reach the threshold for it to be considered. I think it was 75% in favour of people's vote, 19% against, and 8% think they should abstain. So I think the LMH position is for 2 votes in favour and 1 vote against, just for the avoidance of doubt.
That's correct. Although it was, I believe, 74% in favour, but that's essentially correct.
Any other opposition speeches or any items for debate? Yep.
It's just a minor pragmatic question. I think in Resolves 4 it says you're asking Joe Inwood to write to Layla Moran and Annalise Dodds, but I believe that Layla Moran has publicly endorsed the people's vote, and I'm not sure if Annalise Dodds has. Would you consider a smaller, friendly amendment just to fix the clerical error?
Do you,
Hi, Joe Inwood, Oxford SU, he, him. Those are the two MPs who represent Oxford students, so we thought that would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, what Joe said.
Would you still like to propose the amendment, or is that response adequate? Okay. Any other points of debate? Seeing none, we'll now move to vote. Okay. So we'll have 4 against and abstentions. So well, if you are eligible to vote and have a voter pad, please put your voter pad in the air for whichever way you're voting. So votes for the motion. Yeah, hands down. And any votes against? Okay. Sorry, do you have Simon? Do you have a? Sorry. Are you a voting member or? Could you hold up your voting card? Yeah. It's just to ensure, because some people aren't voting members. So this is votes against. Okay, so just one vote against. And any abstentions? So that motion passes. So just the final thing is Lucas's item 4 debate.
Yeah, I put up this item for debate because I thought it might be fun to sort of like gauge the room and run some straw polls on what people think about access to widening participation and where the university goes from here. The Vice Chancellor had a meeting thing, like a Q&A on the 10th of September in which he did something very similar and asked people at the end what do they think of various things. But unfortunately, we don't have the little voter pads working, so that's a bit sad. So we get a little thing. So I guess we could just put our hands up. I was just thinking I'd ask some questions and see what you guys thought, but I'm also happy to have a wider discussion on access, which you can ask me any question you'd like. But yeah, no thing that some people want to go home. I don't know why you never want to leave student council, but some people. Yes. In particular, I want to talk about the reputation that the university has on this and what you guys think about the reputation, because that is something that you guys can actually judge because you feel it. And is also something that the university has to bear in mind when it makes its decisions. Do you think that the university has a good reputation on widening access to participation? You could put up your hands.
So these are not binding votes.
No.
Do you just to let everyone know? Do you need votes to be counted, or is like?
No, don't need votes to be counted. It's just so I can say stuff in committees, being like, well, most students don't think it's it's very good. Or you might think the university has a great reputation for access. That's very possible. So yeah, please raise your hands if you think the university his reputation is hurt by its performance on access and participation. If the university has a bad reputation for access and participation. Okay. Yeah. Basically. Yeah, sure. Yes.
Sorry, do I have to introduce? Yep. Shreyas Ganesh, Exeter College, he, him. I think, so the university has a good reputation nationwide, but a bad reputation for access, if that makes sense. And I think basically the access issue gets ignored when considering the university's reputation.
Thanks. I mean, that's a really useful piece of feedback. All pieces of feedback like that are really useful. What were the other questions that the Vice Chancellor asked? I got thrown off by the voting pads. It's quite sad, really. Well, come in 2 weeks' time and you'll get to vote. It'll be great fun. Centralisation. So you guys all went through the admission system. Did you think the admission system, did it feel fair to you? Please raise your hands if it felt fair. Please raise your hands if it felt unfair or less than fair. Okay. And you can raise your hands if you weren't sure. Yeah, because you can only see it from one side, but you would know your own opinion, and that is relevant. Yep. Yep.
Kat Walton, she, her, VP Women, Oxford SU. I think just a point on that the admissions process hugely advantages the people who have been in more rigorous education, and that's usually private education or public schooling, and people who have had a lot more access to culture and debate and academic conversations, which not everybody from schools have had. So that's a massive disadvantage for people coming from state schools and schools that are lacking funds as well.
Okay.
We need it for the audio.
Silly, he, him. Wadham. Yeah, I mean, like, on the point of, like, fairness, I think, particularly, like, varying from college to college, I think people think there's a perception that, particularly as different colleges have different reputations, right? That, like, so, like, no tea, no shade, but, like, if you're, like, a white, like, private school boy, like, kind of a lot of tutors in those sort of, like, more traditionalist college sort of see themselves in you, and that sort of, perhaps not, like, overtly, but at least from a, like, subtly biased kind of point improves your chances to an extent, or at least alters it. And I think a lot of people think that that perception of who you are and how that impacts not only how you convey yourself, but how people perceive you and how tutors perceive you because of the way that the institution is organized and the fact that access or like representation at the level of lecturer and admissions staff is worse than at the student level. I think that's where a lot of people feel that the unfairness or the disparities actually lie.
Thank you. I think that in the interest of time, I'll keep trusting you.
Yeah, this is undergraduate first. I'm Allison, graduates, she, her. Really interestingly, the graduate access is looking at doing implicit bias training to all the interview, if any degrees require interviews, because at the graduate level they don't require interviews and it is centralized into the departments, but they are still looking at doing implicit bias training for anyone that does undertake interviews, which I think is actually quite good practice, and I think we're going to try to push for the undergraduates to do the same.
There is already guidelines in place for undergraduate interviewers to have implicit bias training. Moving on to, I want to ask a question that, as I touched upon and you touched upon.
I think we'll take a few more points from people just to get.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's have a discussion. Yeah.
Hands up if you have any comments.
Hi, Beth Ann, she, her, Wumcam. I was just going to say, from the grad point of view, although it is more centralized and so on, still applying to colleges for a lot of the people on my course was quite an iffy thing. So it's the PGCE, so teacher training. Everyone's a member of a college even though they don't get taught there, but it wasn't advertised very well what colleges actually took PGCE students. So a lot of people had lots of rejections because the college was like, yeah, we don't admit them. Or things like they didn't know how many places were available, and there seems to be a lot of, everyone went through very different processes with their college up. Like a lot of people feel unhappy at the moment, basically, on how they apply to colleges individually.
It's really interesting, thank you.
Dane Rogers, Merton College, him. I did some admissions for one of the colleges last year, and I think we had 8 students in a row that were from China. Massively large numbers. They were genuinely, objectively good candidates, but they were all from the very good private schools, and we know at least one of them mentioned some of these students in the years above. I wonder particularly how the university can tackle this problem, as it seems like a lot of the discussion has been on access issues within the UK, but we're having the same problems but on a bigger scale with other countries, and it seems like it's a problem we absolutely need to fix, but I'm distinctly unsure quite what the university can do, though I want to find a solution to this.
Shreyas, Exeter, he, him. You've all met me enough times already. I would say that while a lot of the access problems are more endemic to, education systems in general, disparities between them, the university can do a lot to, look into the context behind each application and make a bit more of a judgment than what it currently appears to do, especially in the interview process. And that rather than putting the same bar to every student, which right now we don't do exactly, but the bar can be moved around a little bit more depending on where the student is coming from.
Aruba Ogane, he, him, Queens. I guess in terms of asking what more the university can do, I have to question the extent to which the university really, I suppose the extent to which the university's desire to do something about the access issue comes from a place of genuinely caring, as opposed to not looking bad in the media or in the eyes of one MP who shall go unnamed. I think that there are so many things that could be done, because said MP suggested that you get in contact with every, for example, for every black student who gets 3 A's, which is the minimum requirement to study my subjects here, after results day, and encourage them to apply on a gap year or something like that, which obviously isn't possible for every single one. But there are, to say that there isn't anything else the university can do when there are plenty of schools and areas that don't send many students to Oxbridge with students who are getting the required grades, is just kind of passing the buck on to someone else, and it's kind of lazy and kind of intellectually dishonest.
Here. The grade jumper.
Hello, Josh Tullock, LMH, pronouns he, him. I just wanted to address the idea that the university can't do much, and the idea that there is in this country a deficient education system that is failing so many people, particularly of certain ethnic groups, with the response of the LMH Foundation year, which recognizes that the education system is failing certain people and therefore they will not get the required grade, and as such offers them a year of an Oxford education that brings them up from, let's say, an ABB up to an AAA level, ready for an undergraduate degree and education, so that they come into Oxford on the same level, having received the standard of education in that 1 year that most people from more privileged backgrounds would be getting. So as much as the standard response of the university so far has been to pass the buck onto the education system. Lady Margaret Hall is proving that that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. That is not a feasible defense anymore, because we can take responsibility to a certain extent, even though we may not. It can be plausibly argued that we shouldn't have to, but the case is that the resources aren't there for all schools all the time. So Oxford can take a responsibility to a certain extent. So I just wanted to say how proud LMH is of this scheme, and notify everyone here that there will be a pilot review coming out shortly, which goes through what's happened so far, that LMH is happy to share with the SU and other colleges if that is desired. So we're happy to share that, and hopefully other schemes like this can be taken up by other colleges.
I mean, we'd really like that at the SU, and could probably even present it to student councils. If you'd like. Fun.
Any other? We'll take one more and then let Lucas do the rest of his roles.
Hi, Elodie Powell, St Hugh's College, MCR, She/Her. This is a point for discussion, but also perhaps a suggestion. I know that the university's stance on access has not been wonderful, but just in terms of speaking from personal experience, possibly some suggestions for you about what the SU can do to counteract these things. So I came to Oxford for my undergraduate 5 years ago from a state school, first generation Oxford student, in fact first generation on either side of my family going to university. And I didn't realise that there were going to be other people here in the same boat as me until I was about 6 months into my first year. So possibly from a point of view of the student union, and perhaps something to discuss with the university, is to make more things known. I know that there's a first generation students campaign and things like that, and I know that there are other campaigns that are representing other groups of people, and perhaps something that the student union can do to help encourage or work alongside the university, or just try and get things done where the university isn't doing it, is to promote these kind of things to prospective students, to let people know that they're not the only ones going through it.
Absolutely.
Lucas, do you want to conduct the rest of your polls?
Yeah, so I had two more questions, then I'll open up for more discussion then. The one was related to what we talked a little bit about in terms of colleges and a little bit in terms of grads, and this is a hot button issue up there in the university committees right now, and the Vice Chancellor's got an opinion on it as well, which is sort of about coordination, because at the moment your admission decisions are very much made on a college level, unless you do medicine or are applying for earth sciences this year and some other niche subjects like that. What I wanted to ask is, if you felt when you applied more that you're applying to a degree course or to a college, and whether you think it is more appropriate to have the admission decision be made on a degree course or a college level. So yeah, did you feel like you were applying more to a degree course or to a college? You could put your hands. Oh yeah, sorry. Degree course first. Okay, and college? And both equally? Or one or the other? Okay. So a mixed bag there, so about half and half. That's very interesting. Do you think that, and following on, do you think that it's appropriate that the majority of the decisions should sit mostly within the college setting? That was when you put your hands for college setting, sorry. Mostly within the degree course setting. Okay. Or about half and half again. Okay. Thanks, that's really interesting. I had one final question about the university's reputation, but I also think you guys are very well placed to judge. Which is, so Oxford, like I said, a university that has an amazing reputation for its research and teaching, but one that also has quite a bad reputation for its access and participation. On balance, do you think the university is a good thing for Britain, really? Tough one. scroll that one on you. And then after this, I'll open the floor for more discussion. So if you think it is a good thing on balance, put up your hand. Okay. And if you think it's not such a good thing on balance, put up your hand. Okay, cool. And if you don't really know, you can put up your hand as well. Okay, thanks very much. And now we go on for more discussion. If you
have any, yep.
Hi, Evie, New College, She Her. There's an increasing number of access programs focusing on the access to specific minority groups, which can obviously be really positive. But Oxford has a significantly lower proportion of students with disabilities than other universities, and obviously has huge problems with and resistance to increasing accessibility. And there are very few programs that target the access and outreach specifically for students with disabilities. And many of the current access programs that run indirectly do not consider the needs of students with disabilities or hold them in a fashion that excludes these students. So I want to know what the SU is going to do to consider relating access and outreach to students with disabilities this year.
Access, admissions from students who self-declare as disabled is one of the university's current access targets. It's the only access target the university consistently meets. It's a really low access target. I believe it is at 8.8% of the undergraduate intake, when they assume that roughly 1 in 5 British people have a disability. We are very keen for the university to set more ambitious targets on the ones it already has and expand the number of targets to cover things such as ethnicity, which it currently doesn't target. So essentially, I think our primary aim there, our primary mechanism will be to push them to maintain that target. We sit on the committees that help set those targets. So to push them to maintain that target and to expand it and to be more ambitious with it. There are also issues to do with accessibility. Part of that is to do with mental health and mental well-being on course, and recruitment from students who have specific learning disabilities and stuff like that. We are working on that sort of thing, and today we're out doing a mental health day type activity. But all of that's not actually access and outreach. And we probably should do more in terms of direct access and outreach, and we'd be really interested to hear your opinions and your thoughts, because you're my boss, so tell me what to do. And in terms of physical disability, again, we do need to do more. Again, we're really sorry about this, Bruce. And Oxford as a university, I think, doesn't necessarily put that much of a priority on that in a lot of their, in terms of their recruitment and access discussions. The recruitment of people with disabilities are overwhelmingly non-physical. Again, we probably need to do more there. I'm open to suggestions. We support the Disability Advisory Service. We think they do quite a good job, even if they're quite stretched. But that is, again, for people who are already here, rather than as an outreach and access activity.
Any other points?
Something I think that Alison touched on a bit on her report is student parents, and I think there's an access issue there, since degrees here already ridiculously expensive, and having a child costs something like £4,000 a year. Government benefits give you a quarter of that, and that doesn't help at all for international students. To top that off, I've heard through the grapevine of one college, I think 3 years ago, discriminating illegally against student parents by virtue of throwing them out of university accommodation when they had a child. And I'm not accusing my college of any discrimination, but I believe the fact that rather than focusing on affordable, cheap accommodation for student parents, instead they're giving lots of their spare rooms to academics that can probably deal with the overpriced Oxford expenses slightly more than the postgraduate students that are having to pay fees. What do you think there is that the students' union can do on these sorts of things?
Alison, you want to say something?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. We're trying to work out how much we can do right now, to be honest. We're in conversation with a lot of people actually who are trying to
to work on making it more accessible. But first, we need to figure out what student parents want and what they need, and that's our first step. So we are doing kind of meetups with student parents and seeing how we can help them and how difficult it is, because the problem with graduate students overall, and especially student parents, is that it's very, very different for each individual student, more so than just like an undergraduate picture. And so we're trying to meet those individual needs. Our advice service, to be honest, is the first port of call, and they do a lot with student parents, and they're going to continue doing that with finding other bodies of funding and making those accessible and known. Another thing is I've been in conversation with a few people about making certain hardship funds accessible to student parents, especially international students, because a lot of the hardship funds aren't accessible to international students, and 68%, well, this was the stat from last year, so I'm not sure what the stat from this year is, but 68% of our graduate students are international, which just discounts them from those funds to begin with. So there's different ways in which we're going about it in conversation with the colleges, the university, about hardship funds and funding in general, and meeting those standards. But really, our first step that we've taken is to speak to the student parents and figure out what they need, and we're going to try and supply as much as we can, subsidize to the university to help them with that. So that's kind of a wishy-washy answer, but we're working on it, and any ideas would be great as well.
Yeah, if you are, or if you know a student parent, please do connect to us.
Are there any more?
Hello, Grimble, Yeeham, Exeter. Just so like I'm a sciences, and I think a lot of what made things sciences feel much fairer when I think was that there was much more of a departmental oversight over the whole thing, and like whilst I appreciate a lot of people who are responsible for those decisions at the moment probably will regret not having that power that they currently have. Like, I think it's important to move that into the department, and perhaps sort of a way that they can feel happier about sort of like that move of admissions to the university into in like the department's hands would be saying things like not so much so like choose maybe them to choose from the students who are admitted to university, having some choice over the students who aren't admitted to that particular college. So whilst any university admitted student would go to college, it's like imagine that the sports team in PE. I know that's probably quite an unfortunate metaphor for, but like just vaguely as a base there.
I think for the interest of keeping this meeting like short, Lucas can make some closing remarks.
Thank you for putting your hand on. Oh, okay, sure. Joe will make the closing remarks.
I'm just going to jump in and steal. Thank you very much for staying all this time. I'm conscious it's really close to 7 o'clock, so thank you for staying. This is a really important key priority for all of us this year. We care about it. We want to hear your views. Please get in touch with us, email us, send us messages on Facebook. It's something we're really passionate about, and it really does go to the heart of what the university is and what we're here for. So any thoughts at all, please get in touch. If you came to our session last night at the SU, thank you very much. We're going to do more of them, hopefully. We want to get some kind of semi-regular group meeting to discuss this stuff, and look out for more from Lucas and the whole team throughout the year. Thanks very much. Cheers.
So unless there are any other items for debate, the meeting is adjourned. See you in 2 weeks. Thank you.